Good morning and Shabbat Shalom. I want to take you on a short journey through history, through living classrooms, and into the polling rooms of our present moment. My goal is simple: to make the case that if we care about the future of the Jewish people and the safety and legitimacy of Israel, we must invest innovatively and globally in Zionist education for both youth and adults. Let's begin with the facts. Uncomfortable, clear, recent facts. Over the last few years, multiple independent polls have shown generational shift in attitudes towards Israel. Younger Americans, and younger American Jews in particular, are making more critical of Israeli government policy and less likely to express strong favorability towards Israel than older cohorts. For example, Pew Research found that younger American and younger Jewish Americans are more critical of Israel's approach to the Israel-Hamas war and less favorable towards Israel government than older Americans. Other analyses show the same pattern when looking at the approval of specific Israeli policies. In one recent breakdown, approval of Israel's military action was very low among ages 18 to 34 and rose with older groups. These are not abstract numbers. They show real convictions of the next generation of Jewish leaders, donors, rabbis, teachers, and voters. At the same time, national polling across the U.S. shows the American public view of Israeli government, and in many cases, sympathy towards Palestinians has shifted since October 2023. Across the entire population, favorable views of Israeli government have declined among American Jews and younger cohorts. They are mostly likely to be critical or to vote sympathies for Palestinians, and even to engage or support pro-Hamas protests. That shift is happening in tandem with rising concerns about anti-Semitism and growing unease about how to talk publicly about Jewish identity. This data should be a wake-up. Why? Because knowledge, deep historical contextual knowledge, is not the same thing as opinion. Opinions and emotions respond quickly to images and headlines. When younger Jews and non-Jews haven't received a coherent, compelling education about Zionism's historic roots, its moral, philosophical foundations, and its meaning as the national rebirth of the Jewish people in their ancestral homeland, they are vulnerable to simplified narratives, to powerful emotions emotional frames that omit critical context. Which brings me to the second fact we must confront. Even Israelis themselves, particularly younger Israelis, increasingly report weaker knowledge of Zionist history and classical Jewish texts. There is a worrying trend as everyday life becomes divergent, more secular, and Israeli society changes demographically and culturally. Many young Israelis do not have a firm grasp of the ideological and historical threads that tie modern Israel to millennia of Jewish life in the land, to figures like Avraham, and the continuous Jewish presence that undergirds the claim of Israel as the Jewish ancestral home. The result: less resilience against delegitimization narratives and a weaker transmitted identity across generations. So what does effective Zionist education look like? Let me give you three concrete, evidence-informed models, starting with a program many of you will recognize. First, Alexander Mas High School in Israel. A semester-abroad program for high schoolers, AMHSI brings teens to live and learn in Israel, where the classroom is the land, archaeology, history, civic engagement, Hebrew language, contemporary politics, taught on location with guided field study, Tiulim. The organization and alumni testimony shows a consistent pattern. Teenagers who spend a semester at Alexander Mas report significant deepened connections to Israel, greater knowledge of Jewish and Zionist history, and a higher likelihood of sustained involvement in Jewish communal life. The immersive relational approach, living with peers, studying in primary texts, and traveling the land is a powerful module. Second, integrational communal learning hubs. These are hybrid local programs that pair older Israeli and diaspora educators with young adults facilitators to study Zionist philosophy like Herzl, Achad Ha'am, biblical history from Abraham onward, and modern statecraft, while also providing civic skills, how to engage in public debate, and how to counter delegitimization respectfully, and how to translate learning into action. Imagine synagogue basements, community centers hosting weekly Zionism labs, where a retired history teacher, a young Israeli activist, and a local college student co-teach sessions that mix primary sources, role play, and digital storytelling. Third, digital micro-learning and narrative platforms. Young people live in short visual social formats. We need high-quality videos, interactive timelines, and mobile modules that present Zionist history rooted in primary texts, archaeology, and testimony. Kind of like TikTok. Not propaganda, but intellectually honest narratives that acknowledge complexity while affirming Israel's historical claim and modern challenges. These platforms should include moderated forums, modern forums where participants practice civil discourse and learn to distinguish credible sources from misinformation. We can and must pair these proven models with innovation. A few pilot ideas I propose. Zionist virtual field schools, AR, VR experiences that let students walk ancient Jerusalem, peer into archaeological digs, and hear layered narratives, biblical, rabbinical, and archaeology and modern tied to the place. This lowers the travel barrier and complements actual travel. This campus Zionist fellowships, networks, the multiple mentorship connecting high school MUS alumni, Israeli university students, and campus leaders in the U.S., offering training in campuses, organizing that is both value-driven and respectful of debate. Community civic labs, short courses that combine Zionist history with skills in civic journalism, teaching participants to produce short documentaries, oral histories that strengthen communal ties. Again, TikTok videos. The training and leadership for these programs are rooted in the World Zionist Village. All this requires money, quality control, and scales, which brings me to the final and most urgent ask. We need a global fund. It's called the Global Zionist Education Fund that pools philanthropic capital, Jewish communal dollars, including KKL, Global JNF, Jewish Agency, World Zionist Organization, as well as Israeli government matching grants and impact investing to build, evaluate, and scale high-quality Zionist education worldwide. What would the Global Zionist Education Fund do? Seek high-impact pilots and fully fund scholarships so socioeconomic status is never a barrier to Israeli experiences such as Alexander Mas. Underwrite rigorous evaluation, randomized field trials where possible, so we can answer which program measurably strengthened knowledge, identity, civic engagement, and resilience to delegitimization. Funded programs must be evidence-driven. Create global curriculum commons, multi-language peer review curriculum resources rooted in primary sources, biblical, rabbinic, and modern, and in archaeology and history, available free to schools and synagogues and online platforms. Build the World Zionist Village, a global center and campus where educators, students, and leaders convene for intensive fellowships, curriculum development, and immersive learning. Think of it as an international hub for Zionist pedagogy. Conferences, teachers training, summer intensive programs, and a living museum of Jewish continuity. The village is already a partner with AMHSI and would partner with additional institutions like universities, museums, and community organizations to create a pipeline of trained Zionist educators worldwide. Why invest? Because education is the most durable tool we have. Polling shift tells us that people are shifting their views because they're consuming different narratives. Education, honest, rigorous, place-based, emotionally resonant, changes how people understand those narratives. It creates resilience. It creates a resilient identity and capacity for respectful engagement. It reduces fear and susceptibility to misinformation. It strengthens the next generation so that it can defend Israel's legitimacy not with slogans, but with knowledge and moral clarity. I'm not proposing propaganda. I'm proposing a global effort to teach history faithfully. The continuation of Jewish people in the land of Israel from biblical times to Abraham onward to modern Zionist movement that sought national self-determination, the complex moral dilemma that arises from war and peace, and the living pluralistic society that Israel today. When education is honest, it earns trust. To close, I want you to picture a teenager, American, Israeli, from anywhere in the Jewish world, who spends a semester at Alexander Muss and later takes an online module that brings her to Tel Aviv in VR, or when joins a community hub that becomes a trained peer educator. He or she debates respectfully on campus, corrects misinformation, and organizes interfaith dialogue, and remains connected to Jewish peoplehood. That one young person multiplies. The investment we make now becomes the social capital that keeps our people informed, safe, and morally engaged for decades. So here's the ask. Let's put together a fund to support the opportunity for every Jewish child to have a Zionist education.